What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you. And another one that was on my radar just because I've been listening to this band for a while. And, well, this year it seems like thrash is kind of like, making some headway early on. And yet another cool thrash album that I wanted to go over was the latest offering from Suicidal Angels, Profane Prayer. This also comes out on the 1st of March on Nuclear Blast Records. This band formed in 2001 in Greece. This is their 8th full-length overall. I got into them with 2010's Sanctify the Darkness. I thought it was just straight up nasty thrash, a lot of fierce Slayer vibes to it, and I mean, I'm still a sucker for Slayer. I was okay with them retiring, but, they're back, so that's cool. But back to this band, it's straight up aggressive thrash metal, complete with an Ed Repka cover because thrash metal. Now, admittedly, it had been a while since I'd listened to this band, but honestly, it was like getting back on a bike because this band really hasn't changed all that much over the years, and they really don't need to. They have 8 full lengths. It's all high-octane thrash with definitely a lot of melody to it. The opening track, and I believe one of the lead-off singles, When the Lions Die, I don't know, it kind of works its way between thrash metal and melodic death metal. Like, there's a lot of stuff on that song that reminds me of, like, later Creator. The more recent Creator albums definitely have a touch of, like, anthemic melodeath. This definitely has that. The melodies are, still heavy, but they're a little bit more, like, bright and triumphant. Like, there's, like, a little touch of, like, At the Gates kind of mixed in there. The production on here is fantastic. It is Jens Bogren once again, and yeah, he knows how to mix and master an album properly. This sounds very full, well-balanced, everything comes out clearly, and the guitar tone in here is just monstrously crunchy. Now, while the opening track is definitely more anthemic, I would say once you get into this album, you start getting a taste of what they do well, and what they do well definitely reeks of Slayer. Crypts of Madness and Purified by Fire are just flat-out vicious, thrashy bangers. Faster than hell, lots of machine gun riffs, heavy chugs, and some very token, sinister melodies that just kind of reek of Jeff Hanneman. Crypts of Madness in particular is just absolutely vicious. I love how it just explodes and just gets right down to it. While it stays fast and aggressive throughout most of the song, there is a really cool transition when the lead comes in. It comes in a fast part, but all of a sudden it does this kind of like slow dive bomb, and the whole song kind of slows down to like a doom-laden riff. Like, it sounds sinister and evil as hell. And then the lead follows suit. There's more dive bombs. It's a little bit more twisted sounding. But how they build back into the main verse, there's a very Hell Awaits transition there. Like, you get the stomping toms, a chuggy riff underneath. Like, it kind of sounds like Hell Awaits a little bit. And, I don't really blame them there. And right from the rip, Purified by Fire, I mean, it kind of sounds a little bit like Silent Scream. Like, the riff is kind of similar. Like, you get those fast machine gun chugs, and there's like a little break in the riff before it just flat out takes off. It's a fast, mean song loaded with squealy dive bombs, but once again, it does like kind of that Slayer kind of halftime bit where they bring in the creepy harmonies, and again, it's very South of Heaven-esque. Guard of the Insane and Virtues of Destruction are kind of the same too. A little bit more, I would say, like Sodom and Destruction in there. Like, it has a bit of that German thrash metal bite to it. It's just notably more aggressive. I love the galloping drums in there. And across the board, I would say like all the performances here are just really tight. I like the drum work. It's got a good punchy snap to that snare. And the drums just really drive these songs when they're going fast. Which, it's thrash. So, I mean, yeah, of course it's fast. Vocals, I think, are pretty solid. They definitely sound a lot like Millie Petrosa in spots. But I like the fact that there's like a good variety in terms of cadences. Like, you have some more slow, methodical ones that kind of match up with some of these slower numbers on here. But there's also some like fast, rapid-fire cadences, very similar to Tom Araya. I mean, it adds a little bit of extra energy to it, as if these songs really need a lot of extra energy because, if anything, they are energetic. Now, before I get into the rest of this, I found out that there was a bit of an issue here. When I was listening to this on Spotify, I noticed that some of the tracks were mixed up. Starting with what I thought was Deathstalker, which shows up as track 4. It was a mid-tempo, kind of just chuggy, heavy song, like a little bit of Metallica in it too. And I thought it was solid, but I noticed that this was the song that was listed that had, some guest vocals on it. And one of the key guest vocals on there was Sakis Tolis from Rotting Christ. And initially, when I wrote this down, I was like, man, I didn't hear any guest vocals. Like, was it a gang vocal and they just kind of mixed them way in the back and, it just didn't show up? But when I got down to the title track, track 5, Turns out that track is actually Deathstalker. And to add further confusion, the next track, The Return of the Reaper, I believe is actually the title track because, well, they're at least courteous enough to repeat the song title enough for me to pick that up. And I was like, wait a minute, this kind of changes my notes around and kind of flips it a bit because I was writing notes for the song that I thought it was, and it wasn't. So in actuality, Deathstalker is the 5th track on here, not the title track. Hopefully they got that right in the CD, but at least according to the archives, I don't know if they did. But that song, as well as the last track, The Fire Path of Fate, really show off, more songwriting dynamics. You get, a lot of stuff that is included to add extra atmosphere and even kind of stylistic shifts. Deathstalker, or if you're looking at the back of your CD or on Spotify, Profane Prayer, starts off with an acoustic melody. There's a nasty riff that builds up behind it. It's very chuggy. It's kind of a lumbering groove. It has a more epic / anthemic quality to it, though it still sounds very sinister and brooding and evil. And as the song goes on, you approach a bridge and they just kind of go like full bore classic heavy metal, like a la Angel Witch, Iron Maiden. Big harmonies, really catchy. There's an awesome gallop to this bridge. And across the board, I really love the guitar work on here. The guitar tone itself, I think, is absolutely amazing, but I think the guitar riffs are just savage as hell for the most part, but they really know how to pepper in melody very cleverly. And the leads really showcase a lot of variety. They appropriately fit the songs well. Like if you have a more aggressive song like Crypts of Madness, the leads start getting a little bit squawkier, more dive bombs. And in the more melodic sections of this album, actually you get some leads that really showcase the melody and enhance the melodies that are already there. But anyway, after this really good kind of new album bridge on here, there's a really good clean section, and I forget who it was that did the clean vocals. It might have been the ex-drummer of Septic Flesh. I probably should have wrote that down, but I'm terrible at pronouncing foreign names, so I'd probably just butcher it, but I'm pretty sure it was him. Anyway, it adds like another dimension to the song, and they eventually go back to that main riff, and it just kind of hooks you once again. And the song is really well paced, and I think placed the album really well. It's right in the middle of the album. It kind of breaks up the faster tracks, and for an 8-minute track, I think it flows beautifully. Like, it doesn't kind of lay on one section too long, and it really does write out those new album harmonies to really great effect. And by the time you get into the title track, which again, if you're looking at Spotify or the back of your CD or vinyl, I forgot to include you guys, sorry, that would be Return of the Reaper, which I think is actually track 4, which is listed as Deathstalker. Yeah, there's a definite issue here, and it definitely affected my notes a bit. But that one kind of returns to just flat out aggro, vicious riffs. I love how just super aggressive that song is. There's some really good double time drums on there to just further propel this energetic song. But when it came back to doing the more epic sound at the end, the Fire Paths of Fate is kind of a mixed bag. One thing I like about Greek metal in general is they like to infuse their culture in terms of like Greek folk music into the music. Like that is a big part of Septic Flesh, big part of Rotting Christ. Verathron, we found out that band does that exceedingly well too. I still need to get some of their stuff, but that is almost kind of like a token thing in a lot of Greek metal, period. And while I haven't listened to Suicidal Angels for a while, I'm reasonably sure they've done it before, but this last song, the longest song on the album at nearly 10 minutes, they open up with more ambience and more atmosphere, and then crooned vocals that almost kind of sound like a Middle Eastern chant, or Mediterranean in this case. And it does a good job building up. The riff comes in behind it, and it's a very slow, plodding song. Riff-wise, it's kind of different than anything else in the album. It almost has, well, like a little bit more of a Rotting Christ flavor to it. And there are Greek folk metal elements that sort of pop up behind it too, adding additional atmosphere. But it's very slow and plodding for the most part. It really lays on the atmosphere and kind of lets that carry the song a bit. But as it goes on, it becomes almost like entirely an instrumental for a while. It kind of builds back with the clean female vocals again. You have this big atmospheric section. But after that vocal section, you get this grand buildup. The riffs are huge. They sound, well, I mean, just absolutely epic. And you're expecting them to build into this, like you get like good snare hits, good cymbal accents. It sounds absolutely huge. And then it kind of just transitions into like a chuggy break. There's a pretty good lead over it, but it feels like that wasn't the payoff you were expecting there. And then it switches back to that same melody, albeit played with a little bit more of a folky flavor, and then kind of right back to the main riff that you started off with. This whole bridge on this song feels, I don't know, like oddly out of order, and it kind of dulls the epic impact that you were expecting. Like there's, again, that big buildup, but when it came down to like the payoff for it, it really wasn't there. So the longer tracks in here, while showcasing a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more diversity in their sound, one was definitely a hit, and the other one was kind of a miss just in terms of how it was set up. When it comes down to what this band does well, it's the fast stuff. When they are just aggressive as hell and going for it, like there's just a nasty energy there that reminds me a lot of like 90s thrash, particularly, like where 80s thrash definitely had a lot more of like that new album, you know, speed metal vibe occasionally. The more aggressive side of thrash metal really started to come out in like the late 80s and early 90s for me, like, you know, Demolition Hammer, Devastation, bands like that that almost kind of bordered on death metal. There's some tremolos on here that are kind of close, but I would say this band is firmly planted in thrash. Death metal might be a slight flavor on here, but it's more like possessed in terms of death metal, which is still arguably a little bit more thrashy. On that same token, though, you could say that there really isn't anything on here that you haven't heard before when it comes down to the more standard thrash tracks. They're thrash metal. They're fast, they're angry, but, you know, that's kind of just what I want out of thrash. Like, I like vicious, just mean-spirited, throw-a-chair thrash. And when this band locks onto that energy and just metaphorically throws that chair, you can feel it. It's just nasty, biting, energetic, and for the most part, I really dug this. So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. For the most part, this is just flat-out vicious, riffy fun. If you love thrash metal in general, you are going to find a ton that you love on here, both in terms of like US thrash, German thrash, like it's kind of a mix of those. When this band is locked on that sound in particular, you are just gonna headbang your ass off. I like the fact that they did experiment a little bit on here. Deathstalker, or Profane Prayer, according to the track listing, that song is just flat out awesome. I like the construction of it, the new album elements. I think that's just really hooky, and it showcases, you know, a little bit more dynamic in their sound, but I think they kind of missed the mark on the last track a bit. I don't think the song was bad or anything, but that bridge just felt, I don't know, oddly constructed, and it kind of dulled the impact that I think they were probably going for on there. But outside of those issues, and the track mix-up was a little irritating, this is just solid thrash metal, and so far this year's released a lot of solid thrash metal. You can just kind of throw this one on the list. If you're a big fan of Sodom, Slayer, Creator, say Destruction too, a little bit of Exodus, like, you know, all the good shit, all the good old thrashy shit, or even modern bands that kind of remind you of that, like Havoc, which, I mean, they definitely listen to a lot of classic stuff too, and that definitely shows their work. But yeah, if you just like thrash metal, I strongly recommend this. It's a good time. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel on the banner in the bottom right-hand corner, but if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts. We have old shirts that are discounted, provided we have your size. We also have hats. So if you are looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below. And of course, a giant thank you to all of our supporters. It's, again, been amazing doing this, and so far this year has yielded some pretty fun releases, and there are a ton more coming. So at bare minimum, there are going to be tons of reviews. I know March is pretty loaded with some pretty big releases, so I'm looking forward to that. And of course, the Black Dahlia Murder ranking will be up this week, probably Tuesday or Wednesday. Looking forward to putting that one out there. We had a lot of fun doing that one, and we're looking forward to getting to the next one. But one more big thank you, because you guys are absolutely awesome. You are kind of the lifeblood of this channel, keeping us going probably far more than we should have gone. Like, seriously, it is grossly irresponsible to subscribe to this channel, because you are definitely supporting some delinquents here. But either way, you guys are absolutely awesome, and we will catch you later.